thought getting promoted to the corporate office was my big break, but I had no idea that my new desk neighbor would turn my dream job into a living nightmare. From stolen lunches to sabotaged emails, this coworker didn't just cross the line. He tried to systematically destroy everything I'd worked for. This is the story of the shared workspace disaster that almost ended my career. Before I dive into this insanity, if you love workplace drama and stories about terrible coworkers, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. And drop a comment below. Have you ever had a desk neighbor from hell? I want to hear your horror stories. Now, let me tell you what happened. 3 years ago, I was working as a marketing analyst at a mid-sized tech company in Austin, Texas. I'd been grinding away at the satellite office for 2 years, putting in late nights, volunteering for extra projects, and basically doing everything humanly possible to get noticed by upper management. My name is Marcus, by the way, and at 29 years old, I thought I had finally figured out the corporate game. I was hungry, ambitious, and maybe a little naive about what awaited me at the main headquarters. When my manager called me into her office to tell me I'd been selected for a position at corporate, I nearly jumped out of my chair. This wasn't just a lateral move. It came with a 15% raise, a better title, and most importantly, visibility with the executives who could actually advance my career. The corporate office was everything the satellite office wasn't. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown, a cafeteria with actual chefs, and those fancy standing desks everyone always talked about. I felt like I'd finally made it to the big leagues. But then I met Derek. Derek Patterson had been with the company for 7 years, and he'd been passed over for the same position I'd just received. Twice, actually. I didn't know any of this when I first walked into the open concept workspace and saw the empty desk right next to his. The office used a hot desking system for most employees, but our department had assigned seating. My desk was literally 18 inches away from Derek's, separated only by a thin fabric partition that did absolutely nothing to block sound or create any sense of privacy. On my first day, Derek seemed perfectly pleasant. He shook my hand, gave me a tour of the coffee machine situation, and even showed me where the good snacks were hidden in the break room. I remember thinking how lucky I was to sit next to someone so helpful. The first sign of trouble came exactly 1 week later. I'd brought leftover homemade lasagna for lunch, my mom's recipe that I'd spent hours perfecting the night before. I labeled it clearly with my name, put it in the department refrigerator at 8:30 in the morning, and went about my day. When noon rolled around, I walked to the break room, opened the fridge, and my container was gone. Just vanished. I checked every shelf twice. I looked in the freezer. I even checked the trash cans, thinking maybe someone had mistaken it for old food and thrown it away. Nothing. I ended up eating vending machine chips for lunch that day, frustrated but willing to chalk it up to an honest mistake. Maybe someone grabbed the wrong container. It happens, right? But then it happened again, and again, and again. Over the next month, 6 of my lunches disappeared from that refrigerator. Always the good stuff, too. Never the sad salads I sometimes brought when I was trying to be healthy. No, whoever was taking my food had excellent taste and zero conscience. I started paying attention to patterns. I noticed that Derek always seemed to be eating something different than what he brought in that morning. I saw him with containers that looked suspiciously similar to mine. So one day, I decided to set a trap. I made a batch of my world-famous buffalo chicken dip, but I added an absolutely ungodly amount of ghost pepper sauce to half of it. We're talking the kind of heat that would make a firefighter cry. I put the spicy half in a container labeled with my name, and I waited. Sure enough, around 11:45, I saw Derek casually stroll toward the break room. I pretended to be engrossed in my computer screen, but I was watching his reflection in my monitor like a hawk. 10 minutes later, I heard it. Coughing. Sputtering. The unmistakable sound of someone who had just made a terrible culinary decision. Derek came stumbling back to his desk, face bright red, eyes watering, clutching a bottle of water like his life depended on it. He didn't make eye contact with me for 3 days. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, that he'd learned his lesson and we could coexist in peace. I was so wrong. About 2 weeks after the ghost pepper incident, something strange started happening with my emails. I'd send routine messages to clients, and suddenly I'd be getting confused responses. People asking why I was being so aggressive in my tone, or wondering why I'd made promises the company couldn't keep. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. I'd read and reread my sent emails, and they looked fine to me. Professional, appropriate, nothing out of the ordinary. Then my manager, Patricia, called me into her office. She had a printed email in her hand, and her expression told me this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. "Marcus," she said slowly, sliding the paper across her desk, "can you explain this?" I picked up the email and felt my stomach drop. It was a message supposedly sent from my account to our biggest client, and it was absolutely brutal. Condescending, dismissive, and ending with a thinly veiled threat about taking our business elsewhere if they didn't meet our terms. "I didn't write this," I stammered. "Patricia, I swear to you, I did not send this email." She looked at me with the kind of expression that said she wanted to believe me, but couldn't figure out how else to explain the evidence in front of her. I asked IT to pull the logs, to check when and where the email had been sent from, and that's when we discovered something interesting. The email had been sent at 2:15 in the morning, when I was definitely at home asleep. But here's the thing about our open concept office. We didn't have individual computer passwords back then, just a general department login that everyone shared. Anyone with access to our floor could have sent that email from my workstation. I knew it was Derek. I knew it in my bones, but I had no proof, and making accusations without evidence would only make me look paranoid and unprofessional. Patricia gave me a written warning, first strike on my previously spotless record. Things only got worse from there. Derek started engaging in what I can only describe as psychological warfare. He would take personal calls at his desk, speaking just loud enough for me to hear, but quiet enough that complaining would seem petty. He'd clip his fingernails at his desk every single Tuesday. He installed a small fan that somehow always blew directly at my face. He would eat the crunchiest possible foods during my important client calls. Carrots, apples. Once, I swear, he brought in a bag of actual tortilla chips and just went to town while I was trying to close a $20,000 deal. I went to HR multiple times. "Marcus," the HR representative said with barely concealed condescension, "eating food at one's desk is not a violation of company policy. Neither is having a personal fan nor taking phone calls." I tried to explain the pattern. I told them about the stolen lunches, the sabotaged emails, the constant low-level harassment. But without hard evidence, they just saw me as a complainer who couldn't get along with his coworker. Then came the reply all incident. We had a company-wide email thread going about the upcoming holiday party. Innocent enough, right? Just people RSVPing and suggesting themes. One morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from my manager and a text that just said, "Call me now." Apparently, at 3 in the morning, someone had sent a reply-all email to the entire company, all 600 employees, containing a lengthy profanity-laced rant about how the party was a waste of money and how most of our executives were overpaid idiots who couldn't manage their way out of a paper bag. It went viral internally. People were screenshotting it, forwarding it to friends at other companies. I became a meme in our own office. I went straight to IT, demanding they check the security cameras near my desk. There had to be footage of whoever had accessed my computer. And there was. But the footage showed something I hadn't expected. The cameras had been repositioned. My desk was now in a blind spot that hadn't existed when I first started. Guess who had helpfully reported a broken camera mount 3 weeks earlier and supervised the repair crew? Derek Patterson. I was put on a 30-day performance improvement plan. 2 strikes now. 1 more, and I was gone. I decided to fight back, but smarter this time. I started documenting everything, every interaction, every snide comment, every time Derek conveniently stepped away from his desk right before something went wrong with mine. I bought a small notebook and kept it locked in my car, filling pages with timestamps and observations. I also started quietly talking to other people in the office, former desk neighbors of Derek's who had since requested transfers, the admin assistant who had been with the company longer than anyone and had seen everything. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Derek had done this before. 3 times, actually. 3 different people who had been promoted over him, all of whom had experienced similar problems before eventually quitting or being fired. None of them had ever been able to prove anything. Derek was careful, methodical. He knew exactly how to torment someone while keeping his hands technically clean. I decided to set one more trap. I loudly mentioned to a coworker, within Derek's earshot, that I would be working late that Thursday night to finish a major presentation. I said I'd probably be there until midnight at least, and I made sure to emphasize how important this presentation was to my career. But I didn't actually stay late. Instead, I left at my normal time, parked 2 blocks away, and waited in the coffee shop across the street with a clear view of our building's entrance. At 11:30, I saw Derek's car pull into the parking garage. I called security immediately. I told them I'd left my badge at my desk and needed to be let in. The night guard, a friendly guy named Terrence, who I'd always made a point to chat with, let me in through the side entrance. I crept up to our floor, phone already recording video, and there was Derek, sitting at my computer, typing away with the most satisfied smirk on his face. "Working late," I said from the doorway. The look on his face was worth every stolen lunch, every sleepless night, every ounce of stress he'd cost me. Pure, unadulterated terror. I took my video directly to HR the next morning, and then to Patricia, and then to her boss. I made sure everyone with any power in that company saw exactly what Derek had been doing. He was fired within the week. As it turned out, the email that he'd been composing when I caught him was going to be sent to a major industry publication, supposedly from me, leaking confidential company information. That wouldn't have just cost me my job, it would have been potential legal action. My performance improvement plan was rescinded. I received a formal apology from HR, though they stopped short of admitting they should have taken my complaints more seriously from the beginning. The cameras were repositioned again, and the company finally implemented individual login credentials. I stayed at that company for another year before moving on to a better opportunity, but I never forgot the lessons I learned from Derek Patterson. Last I heard, Derek tried to sue the company for wrongful termination. He lost, badly. Sometimes karma takes its time, but it always comes around eventually. Thank you so much for listening to my workplace nightmare story. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more crazy stories about terrible coworkers, toxic bosses, and office drama. I read every single comment, so let me know, what's the worst thing a coworker has ever done to you? And if you have your own workplace horror story you'd like me to share in a future video, send it in. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.